Admiral Zethkar stood on the command deck of the Dominion flagship, watching the holographic display with cold satisfaction. The numbers were beautiful in their simplicity. 347 warships against the human fleet of merely 92 vessels. The mathematics of war had never been clearer to him. "Calculate projected casualties," he ordered his tactical officer. The insectoid officer clicked his mandibles and processed the data. "At current force ratios, we estimate losing between 47 and 63 vessels. Human losses projected at total annihilation. Acceptable parameters for victory, Admiral." Zethkar nodded his massive head. 63 ships. Perhaps 12,000 warriors. A small price for conquering the human colony of New Eden and opening the path to Earth itself. The Dominion had always understood war as an equation. You fed soldiers into the machine, and territory came out the other end. Every species in the galaxy operated this way. Every species except humans. Across the void, Captain Sarah Chun sat in the command chair of the UN's Prometheus. Her fleet was small compared to the alien armada bearing down on them, but she was not afraid. Fear had no place in her calculations. "Status report," she said quietly. "All ships reporting battle ready, Captain. Shield harmonics synchronized. Point defense networks linked. The new armor plating is holding steady." Sarah looked at the enemy fleet on her display. 347 ships. Each one crewed by beings who saw their own soldiers as numbers on a spreadsheet. She had read the intelligence reports. The Dominion accepted losses as part of warfare. They budgeted for death, the way accountants budgeted for office supplies. Humans did not. "Open a channel to the fleet," Sarah ordered. Her voice went out to every ship, every crew member, every soul who had volunteered to stand between the Dominion and their home. "This is Captain Chun. You all know why we are here. Behind us is New Eden. 4 million civilians, families, children. They are counting on us to hold this line. The enemy believes they can spend lives like currency and purchase our defeat. They have calculated their acceptable losses." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We have no acceptable losses. Every ship in this fleet matters. Every person matters. We do not win by dying for our colony. We win by making sure every single one of us comes home. Fight smart. Fight together. And trust in your training." The channel closed. Sarah turned to her tactical officer. "Show me the battle plan." The hologram shifted, displaying the intricate web of maneuvers they had practiced for weeks. Every human ship knew exactly where to be at every moment. Every captain understood the movements of every other vessel. They were not 92 individual ships. They were one organism with 92 bodies. The Dominion fleet advanced in a standard wedge formation. It was efficient for maximizing firepower, but it was also predictable. Zethkar saw no reason to be creative. Superior numbers made creativity unnecessary. The first shots came from the human fleet. Long-range missiles shrieked through space, weaving between the approaching ships. The Dominion point defense systems activated, swatting down most of them, but not all. 3 ships in the forward element took hits. Their shields flickered and held, but barely. Minimal damage. The tactical officer reported. Continuing advance. Zethkar watched the humans begin to move. Their ships were spreading out, forming strange patterns that his tactical computer struggled to analyze. The formations kept shifting, never staying still long enough to predict. "What are they doing?" he asked. "Unknown, Admiral. Their movements do not match any tactical doctrine in our database." That was because human tactical doctrine was not about maximizing damage to the enemy. It was about minimizing damage to themselves. Every maneuver created overlapping fields of fire where multiple ships could support each other. Every position change forced the Dominion gunners to constantly recalculate their targeting solutions. The fleets closed to medium range. Dominion plasma cannons opened up, sending brilliant green bolts across the void. Human ships twisted and rolled, their pilots pushing their vessels to the limits of their structural tolerances. Shields flared under hits, but the damage was spread across the entire fleet. No single ship took concentrated fire for more than seconds at a time. Human weapons returned fire with precision that shocked the Dominion officers. Each shot was coordinated with dozens of others, striking the same point on enemy shields within milliseconds of each other. The overlapping impacts did not give the shields time to regenerate between hits. The first Dominion vessel exploded, then the second, then the third. "Admiral, we are losing ships faster than projected," the tactical officer shouted. Zethkar stared at the display in disbelief. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had ever faced. They did not throw themselves into glorious combat. They did not sacrifice ships to create openings. They fought like surgeons, cutting away his fleet piece by piece, while somehow keeping their own vessels intact. A human cruiser took a direct hit to its engines. Any other fleet would have left it behind. Instead, 2 frigates immediately moved to flank the damaged vessel, extending their shields to cover it while it limped toward the rear of the formation. A repair tender, moving under the protection of 3 destroyers, reached the cruiser and began emergency repairs, even as the battle raged around them. "Why are they wasting resources protecting one damaged ship?" Zethkar demanded. His tactical officer had no answer. The reason was simple, but it was something the Dominion could never understand. Human militaries did not see their soldiers as resources. They saw them as people. Every captain in the fleet knew the crew of that damaged cruiser. They had trained together, eaten together, celebrated birthdays, and mourned losses together. Leaving them behind was not a tactical option. It was not even a consideration. That meant every human ship fought with absolute confidence that their comrades would come for them if they fell. They took risks that other species would never attempt, because they knew they would never be abandoned. And because they would never be abandoned, they never panicked. They never made the desperate mistakes that came from the fear of being left behind. The battle continued for 3 hours. Dominion ships fell one after another. Their formations broke as captains began to question the wisdom of pressing forward. Some tried to retreat, only to find themselves cut off by human vessels that had somehow anticipated their movements. Others stayed to fight and were methodically destroyed. By the end of the 4th hour, the Dominion fleet had lost 187 ships, more than half their force. The survivors were scattered, communications disrupted, command structure in chaos. Admiral Zethkar stood alone on his command deck. Most of his officers were dead, killed when a human strike knocked out the flagship's secondary bridge. He stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what had happened. The human fleet floated before him, still in perfect formation. Not a single ship had been destroyed. Several showed damage, some severe, but every vessel still flew. Every crew still lived. "Impossible," he whispered. A communication came through. Human frequencies. He accepted it without thinking. Captain Sarah Chun appeared on his display. Her uniform was slightly disheveled, a small cut on her forehead, but her eyes were calm. "Admiral Zethkar, your fleet is destroyed. You can surrender now, or we can finish this. Your choice." Zethkar stared at her. "How? We had superior numbers." "Superior firepower. The mathematics of this battle should have ensured our victory." "Your mathematics were wrong from the start," Sarah said. "You calculated acceptable losses. You built your entire strategy around how many of your own people you were willing to sacrifice. We did not. We built our strategy around keeping every single person alive. That meant we had to be smarter. We had to train harder. We had to develop better technology, better tactics, better coordination. Because failure was not an option. But that is inefficient. War requires sacrifice. Not for us. We refused to accept that equation. And because we refused to accept it, we found ways to break it." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. His mandibles clicked slowly as he processed this information. Your species is young. You have been spacefaring for barely 3 centuries. How can you have learned what the Dominion has not learned in 15,000 years? Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because for most of our history, we fought each other. We spent thousands of years learning how to kill humans. Do you know what we discovered? That the societies who treated their soldiers as expendable always lost in the end. The ones who valued their people, who brought them home, who never left them behind, those were the ones who built empires that lasted. We learned that lesson in blood and fire, over and over again, until it became part of who we are. She leaned forward. You see your soldiers as numbers. We see ours as family. And you cannot defeat a family by killing some of them. You only make the rest fight harder. The communication ended. Admiral Zethkor looked around at his ruined flagship, at the debris field that had once been the mightiest fleet in the Dominion. He had come here expecting an easy victory. He had calculated the acceptable losses and found them within parameters. The humans had calculated differently. They had looked at their people and decided that no loss was acceptable. And then they had found a way to make that impossible standard into reality. He gave the order to surrender. When the news reached the Dominion homeworld, the High Council was furious. They demanded explanations. They accused Zethkor of incompetence. But some of the wiser members looked at the battle data and felt something they had not felt in centuries. Fear. Because if the humans had fought this way once, they could fight this way again, and again, and again. A species that refused to accept losses would never stop improving, never stop adapting, never stop finding ways to survive. The Dominion had built an empire on the mathematics of acceptable losses. They had conquered 100 worlds by throwing lives into the furnace of war. But they had never faced an enemy who looked at that equation and simply refused to accept it. They had never faced humanity. In the years that followed, the human Imperial fleet became legendary. Other species watched their battles with amazement. They studied human tactics, tried to copy human technology, attempted to replicate human training methods. Some succeeded in part, none succeeded completely. Because the secret was not in the technology or the tactics. The secret was in the mindset. The secret was in looking at your soldiers and genuinely believing that every single one of them deserved to come home. Other species paid lip service to that idea. Humans meant it. And as long as they meant it, they would keep finding ways to make it happen. The galaxy learned a new truth in those years. When you faced humanity, you could not calculate acceptable losses, because humanity had none. And they would make you pay for every drop of blood you tried to spend. Captain Sarah Chun retired as an admiral years later. She had never lost a ship in combat. Her record was studied in military academies across human space. When asked her secret, she always gave the same answer. I never accepted that any of my people were expendable. I spent every moment finding ways to keep them alive. That is the whole secret. Care about your people more than the enemy cares about theirs, and you will always find a way to win. It was a simple lesson, but it was one the galaxy would never forget.